Recovering Addict named Richard again, coming at you from Recovery Resources. Going to continue on from the previous video, talking about the things that are made available to addicts for recovery. The treatment center industry, as I pointed out, has become a multi-billion-dollar industry around the world, and there's nothing wrong with making money. Okay, if you're providing the world with a service that it needs, there's nothing wrong with being compensated for that. Steve Jobs. All right, one would argue that he changed the world and got well compensated for that, and more power to him. Okay, I've got nothing against profit. I've got nothing against a corporation making a good living. None of that. Okay, the problem I have is when people are deliberately victimized by entities that are out just to make money by profiteering on their misery and their hopelessness and desperation. That's what I have a problem with. If addicts fail to get what they need at a treatment center and they go out and they use again, what happens? Okay, people die. Addicts die every day in relapse. Addicts die because they ran out of hope, because they think that they missed something, that they can't get this thing, and it's just not true. But there's this feeling that of hopelessness that goes along with active addiction. Maybe you built up some hope in the treatment center and you were able to stay there for 30, 45, 60 days, whatever, and you felt some hope. You go out and relapse and you feel absolutely worthless and end up sticking a gun in your mouth. Okay? It happens. And that's what happens when people fail to get the correct information that they need to be properly educated about what addiction is. The addiction industry, around here, you can't swing a dead cat without hitting a treatment center, man. They are everywhere. They are ubiquitous. Okay? Again, that would be fine if they were all delivering a good product, and they simply all are not. Okay, there's one treatment center that I know of that offers 6 or 8 different treatment modalities depending on what drug that you were addicted to. They have one separate one for addiction to bath salts, and another one for addiction to heroin, and another one for addiction to whatever, okay? And it's all very different and specific to the substance, as though that really means anything. And as I've pointed out numerous times already, it's not the substance that's addictive. It's us. It's us. It's what's inside us. They package their treatment centers and they sell it. And they sell it in a way that makes people think that, I must have that in order to have recovery. One of the things that they do is they talk about lately the cutting edge research that they're doing. They're all doing this cutting edge research, and they're really finding out all these new and wonderful things about addiction. And if that was all true, then they have a great success rate, and they simply don't. Okay. One of the things that they talk about is the role of dopamine and neurotransmitters in addiction. It has a place. Okay. But having been in this industry for a little while, when I wrote my book and I'd shop it around to different treatment centers, and I'm trying to show them that this is something that can benefit their clients, I ran into a lot of people that felt very threatened by that. Okay, or they look at it and they'd say, "Oh, you just don't understand. We're doing work on neurotransmitters." Okay. Now, I doubt very much that any specific treatment center itself is doing work on neurotransmitters, okay, or dopamine. But they'll tell you things like, "Oh, we've discovered dopamine. It's new and it's all cutting edge, right?" And when I was going to conferences and stuff, and I'd set up a booth, and I'd go to this conference and I'd meet people, and rubbed elbows with these people in this industry. And they'd look at me and they'd listen to me and then they'd say, "Oh, but what about the role of dopamine?" And what that was really meant to do was make me feel somehow uneducated, or make me feel stupid or less than or whatever. I was in over my head. None of that was the case, let me assure you. I studied neurotransmitters in anatomy and physiology in college, okay? Part of my training as a registered nurse delved into these fields. I studied it in psychology. All right? Any psych course in any community college will teach you about dopamine. There's nothing new about it. Okay, dopamine was discovered in 1957. Okay, that's not new. All right, just to take away some of the mystery of what these neurotransmitters do, specifically dopamine, they're chemical messengers in the brain, and they send a message to an area of the brain, and they produce a feeling. Okay, dopamine is a neurotransmitter that's sent to an area of the brain and it makes you feel pleasure. Okay? So what they're really saying is that when addicts use, dopamine is released and they feel pleasure. There's nothing monumental or revelatory about this whatsoever. I mean, is it a revelation to anybody out there that addicts use because it felt good? Is that a surprise? Is this new cutting edge research? I don't think so. That's like telling people that they've discovered a link between food that tastes good and morbid obesity. Okay? There's nothing new about it. All right? Yes, of course addicts used before because it felt good. If it didn't feel good, we wouldn't have used, would we? All right? If it induced vomiting every time we tried to use and made us desperately ill, we wouldn't continue to do it. We used because it felt good. We used because it made us feel good inside. Not cutting edge, not new. Not since 1957, it's not new, okay? And they'll talk about their new therapies, all right? This stuff makes me want to hurl. All right, so you go to this treatment center and they set you up with an exercise regimen and they have a nutritionist that comes in and gives you good foods and vegetables and fruits and teaches you about how to have good nutrition. Perhaps they have Tai Chi. Some of them are doing massage therapy. And you have some guy wearing a thong hitting a gong in the background while you're getting a massage and burn incense and stuff. And I'm sure it's a very pleasant experience, okay? But it's not going to turn you into a non-addict. It'll turn you into a relaxed addict, okay? You can do Tai Chi or yoga or ride horses all day long. You can exercise till the cows come home. You know what you're going to be? An in-shape addict, okay? It's not going to change anything in here. It's not going to fill that void, all right? There are nice things that I'm not saying, you can go out in the woods and do team building exercises and help each other climb a cliff, and that's all well and good. It's still not going to turn you into a non-addict, all right? And people spend 6 figures trying to have these experiences so they can understand how to get through this stuff, how to find recovery. Recovery is only found if we can ride a freaking horse. Are you serious? Equine therapy? There's no addicts that ride horses? Really? This is nonsense, okay? I mean, they're nice things, don't get me wrong. Jump out of a plane with a parachute if you want to. It's still not going to change anything in here, all right? It won't. Anyway. One of the things that they also like to tell addicts, for some reason, and I have my own theories on this, is something I heard at my treatment center in 1986 when I went there. All right, so we're all gathered in a circle and we're hugging each other like this in a circle and we're swaying back and forth and they're playing Lean On Me or something like that. It was all, feelings and people crying and stuff. And there's one of the counselors says, look to your left and look to your right, and those people are going to be gone within a year. Okay? 97% of you are going to fail. Now, I thought about that. I've been in this treatment center for 30 days. I've got hope. And now this man's telling me I'm 97% guaranteed to fail? Really? Why? Is this a scare tactic? What is the point of that? That's like telling me I have a 97% excuse to go out and freaking use again. Okay? And if I do, I could very well end up dead. All right? Not just from suicide. There's other things that happen to people too. Drug deal gone bad. Okay? Any number of things can happen. All right? We can end up dead if we don't get the correct information. I don't know where this statistic even came from. I doubt very seriously whether anybody actually did research to show that there's a 97% failure rate at treatment centers. And even if it were true, why would you tell people that? It's like selling them a car and telling them it's 97% guaranteed to fail. You're going to keep buying that car? I got a 3% chance of making it to work every day? Really? Sign me up, right? Okay, so why would they tell people that? It's first of all, it's nonsense because way more than 3% of us stayed clean after treatment, okay? So, that's why I printed up these shirts. You can be a 3%er, okay? If you go on a treatment, bring one of these shirts with you and tell them when you hear that kind of a statistic, tell them to stick it in their ear. You're a 3%er, okay? Yeah, one has to wonder what their motives are for that, okay? Are their motives always to help people stay clean? Because if you go to a treatment center and get clean and stay clean, they're done making money, aren't they? But if you relapse and come back, they get to charge you again. I was in a meeting one time at a treatment center, a staff meeting, and one of the management people was telling us that, Mr. Smith is coming back to our treatment center again, and there was this general rolling of the eyes. What, again? And he looked at everybody around the table and said very seriously, and I couldn't believe everybody kept a straight face. He says, "You don't understand. Research shows," and I love it when people say that, because research, whose research? Whose research? Okay? Research shows that 17 times is what it takes for somebody to get clean. They have to be readmitted to our facility 17 times in order to find recovery. Really? And at $35,000 a whack, I don't have a calculator, but that's a lot of money. Okay? So, telling people that they're almost guaranteed to fail as they're leaving your treatment center, maybe it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. I don't know, but it makes me wonder. One of the things they tell addicts in treatment centers is that they don't know how to feel their feelings, and they'll tell you this, and they'll look at you with this very somber expression, this very sympathetic expression, and they'll say to you, "You don't know how to feel your feelings," okay? And then, with our propensity to feel sorry for ourselves, and want to be seen as the sickest person in the room, sometimes we buy right into that, right? "Oh, I don't know how to feel my feelings." And they'll give you a paper, and it'll have all these pictures on it, of people that feel angry and sad and jealous and all these other feelings. And it's meant so that you can identify what these things are called feelings. Okay? And you're supposed to learn what feelings are so that you can then begin to experience them. This is the biggest load of nonsense I've ever heard in my life. But people buy into it. I hear it all the time. "I'm learning how to feel my feelings today." You know what? You don't have a choice. Okay? If you're a human being, you have feelings, unless you're some kind of sociopath. And there are those of us that are, but that's a very small percentage of people that are actually sociopathic. The rest of us felt our feelings. Because if we didn't feel our feelings, what would have been our motivation to go and seek treatment to begin with? Okay? We felt feelings. We didn't have a choice. We didn't like them, but we felt them. Okay? We felt guilt, remorse, self-pity, isolation, degradation, feeling degraded. We felt alone and alienated. We felt all these things. We didn't have a choice. We didn't want to feel them, but we felt them nonetheless. And the idea of this comes from, if you're using opioids, you're using it to control pain. As a registered nurse, I know. I've given people thousands of times, all kinds of high-end opioids, like morphine and Dilaudid and stuff like that, to ease their physical pain. And it takes care of their pain. And their reasoning on this is that if you're in pain, okay, you're taking drugs to feel not in pain anymore, okay? Yeah, there's some credence to that, but you know what? When I give people morphine or any other drug like that, they're still able to experience their emotions fully. Okay? It eases their physical pain. It doesn't anesthetize our feelings. Okay? We feel them. Sometimes to our detriment, but we feel them. Okay? Anyway, to get back to the topic at hand, we were talking about, people coming in and out of treatment centers multiple times, and there are a great many people out there that are doing this very thing, and it's very sad. I met a guy as a charge nurse in a facility. I met this patient who told me that he'd been in 36 different treatment centers. Now, money aside, 35 grand a whack. Money aside, how much time has he spent in a treatment center? 30 days stay, 60 days stay, 90 days, 36 times. And he's still coming back looking for the answers. After 36 times, I think you've heard everything you're going to hear. I think you've heard everything relevant there is. The problem is you're not getting the right information. How much of your life is gone now? How much of it is spent wasted in active addiction? And how much of it is spent wasted going from one facility to another? So how do they accomplish this? Because the insurance companies won't pay for that many admissions, okay, for chemical dependency. They won't pay for it. After one or two times, they're going to wash their hands and say, "You had your shot, done." So one of the things that treatment centers do is employ psychiatrists, okay? Now, I'm not saying that there are no people with mental illness that have addiction. There are. And without the proper medication and diagnosis, those people have a very, very difficult time staying clean. But is everybody that receives a psychiatric diagnosis actually suffering from that particular ailment? Good question. Because, when the person comes back to treatment for readmission, they need to be readmitted. The insurance company won't pay for chemical dependency. But if you've got a psychiatric diagnosis now that says that you're bipolar, now you're in mental health treatment and they'll pay for that. And the next time you come through, perhaps you'll be manic depressive, okay? Or some other thing, okay? People end up going through these things and getting multiple diagnoses that will stick with them the rest of their lives. Potentially, there may be some people out there taking psychiatric medications that don't even need it, trying to find recovery. Okay. Now, if you do have a valid psychiatric diagnosis, you definitely need your medication, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's not the same as using, okay? You're using it to get yourself right so that you can proceed with recovery. There's nothing wrong with that. It's important, okay? Mental illness is a real thing that needs to be treated in a real way. The problem is that there is the possibility that some treatment centers are using this as a means to an end, giving people this diagnosis so that they can bill the insurance company again and again and again and again. Okay? It's very unfortunate, but it happens. Okay, so if you go to a treatment center, and I'm not saying you shouldn't, but if you do, okay, it's not a bad idea, because again, it gets you away from the people that you've been around, that you've been using with and stuff like that. It gets you to a place where people can actually help you with the therapist and stuff like that. There are certain things that you need to look for in a treatment center, okay? One of them is adherence to something called HIPAA, H-I-P-P-A, okay? And this protects your confidentiality. If somebody calls that treatment center to find out if you're there, they need to have a password set up to identify that that person is allowed to have this information. I've seen this happen, okay? Somebody calls up, is Sally there? Oh yeah, here she is. Okay, this could be anybody. It could be some stalker, it could be their drug dealer, it could be anybody. They don't know who that is, and that person has no right to know that that person's in that facility. It could be their ex stalking them. It could be any number of things. They don't have a right to that information, and your treatment center needs to make sure that they jealously guard your privacy. It's a right, not a privilege, not something they do because they're nice. It's your right. It's federal law, okay? The other thing you need to make sure of is that there is a reasonable ratio of clients to counselors or therapists. There are very good therapists out there, but if they're overwhelmed with 50 or 60 clients to see in a day, okay, you can see that this is not something that's going to happen very well, okay? And some treatment centers do this because the fewer therapists that they have to pay to help the clients, then the greater their profits, okay? So they overwhelm these people. I've seen it happen personally. You need to have some one-on-one time with a therapist or counselor while you're in the treatment center so you can talk about things like the nature of addiction or the things that you did when you were out there in active addiction that you need help coming to terms with. You know, if a friend of yours died or you caused some great harm to somebody, you need to help coming to terms with some of this stuff. Now, they're not all real well qualified. And a friend of mine in a detox one time, and the detox counselor told him, in a detox, you're talking about a 7-day stay. In a detox, this guy's telling my friend that he needed to write a letter to his parents and explain to them that he was a homosexual. This guy called me up and says, this is what my counselor said I needed to do. And I said, why would you need to do that? Why? Okay, you're going to burden your parents with this information they might not be ready for. For what? Okay, what is this supposed to help? So be careful about what it is they're telling you to do. Does it seem reasonable? Does it seem helpful? Okay, there are good treatment centers out there, but if the only way into recovery is through a treatment center, what about the rest of us? What about those that can't afford it? What about people that live in other countries that have no access to this kind of stuff? Okay, if you're living off in Saskatchewan, you might not have access to a treatment center. What about those people? They're not going to get clean? They've got treatment centers in Beverly Hills charging over $100,000, and they give you all this nice food, and they do all this wonderful stuff, and they have very sophisticated looking people helping you. And if that's the road to recovery, what about the rest of us? There is a way, and we're going to find it together.